In my last video, I showed why the wealthy stop chasing bigger salaries. Today, I'm going to show you why most middle-class workers are chasing raises that don't actually make them richer. Your company gave you a 2% raise this year. They called it a reward. On paper, it was. In reality, for millions of workers facing rising housing, food, insurance, and other essential costs, a standard 2% raise can leave them with purchasing power that feels closer to a pay cut than a raise. Not because your boss lied, not because payroll made a mistake, because the number on your pay statement isn't the number that determines your actual standard of living. Today, we're going to do the math that almost never appears in your performance review. My name is Peter, and what I'm about to show you is why a standard 2% raise, on paper, can behaviorally function as a deep pay cut in practice. Let's set the scene first. You're earning somewhere between $55,000 and $75,000. You've been at your company 2, maybe 3 years. You've been reliable. You show up. You do your job. And in January or March, whenever your review cycle runs, your manager tells you, "Great year. We're giving you a 2% raise." Maybe it's 2%, maybe it's 2.5%. The exact number isn't the point. The point is what happens next. You go home, you do a quick calculation in your head, 2% on $65,000, that's about $1,300 more per year, roughly $108 per month before taxes. You think, okay, that's not life-changing, but it helps. That thought right there is the first place the math goes wrong. Let's build this out with real numbers because the gap between what you earned and what you keep is far bigger than most people realize. $65,000, annual salary. You get a 2% raise. Your new salary is $66,300, a $1,300 nominal difference on paper. But that $1,300 doesn't arrive whole. Your additional earnings are generally taxed at your marginal tax rate, the rate that applies to your next dollar of income. You're in the 22% federal bracket. Add FICA, Social Security, and Medicare, that's another 7.65%. State taxes vary, but let's use a moderate state. Call it 5%. Total tax drag on that specific chunk of marginal income? Roughly 35%. $845 roughly. That's your real annual take-home from the raise. That is about $70 per month. That's less than many families spend on groceries in a single weekend. Write that down. $70 per month. Now, look at what moved while you weren't watching. Rent. The average American renter paid about 5.5% more in 2025 than the year before. On a $1,500 apartment, that's $82.50 a month. Gone. On a $2,000 apartment, it's $110. Already, your entire raise has been completely absorbed just by keeping a roof over your head. Groceries. Food prices rose roughly 3.5% in the past year, and that number gets pushed even higher by tariffs hitting imported goods. Food at-home spending for a single adult went up $14 to $16 more a month. Not dramatic on its own, but we aren't done. Car insurance. If you own a car, and in most of America you have no choice, the average premium increased 13% in 2024. If you were paying $1,400 a year, you're now paying $1,582. That's $182 a year, $15 more a month. Health insurance premiums through employers went up an average of 7% in 2025. If your employee contribution was $250 a month, it's now $267. Another $17. Utilities. Energy costs are up approximately 4% year over year. On a $180 bill, that's $7 more. We haven't touched credit cards. We haven't touched anything you financed. We haven't even factored in the hidden tariff pass-through that's quietly added 2 to 3 cents per dollar to the basic necessities you buy at Target, Walmart, or Home Depot. We haven't even factored in shrinkflation, the fact that you're paying the same price for a box of cereal or a bottle of laundry detergent that is now 15% smaller. Let's do the final calculation. Your raise gave you $70 in new spending power. The cost of existing, not living better, not taking a vacation, just literally maintaining the exact same baseline existence went up between $150 and $180 a month. Imagine sitting at the dinner table telling your family, "Good news, I got a raise." Then, quietly realizing month after month you're actually falling behind. That's why a 2% raise can feel like a 10% pay cut, even when your salary technically increased. The raise exists on paper, the extra purchasing power doesn't. In this example, that works out to roughly a $1,000 annual purchasing power gap. In this example, the combined effect of taxes and rising living costs leaves your effective purchasing power roughly 10% worse than many people expect after hearing the words, "you got a raise." If companies know this, why do they still hand out 2% raises every year? Because your employer's finance team benchmarks against nominal wage growth, not real purchasing power. They look at the corporate market, see other companies paying 2% and budget 2%. They think they're being competitive, but nominal means dollars. Real means what those dollars actually buy. The system is calibrated to maintain the appearance of compensation progress while operating inside a framework where inflation consistently erodes what you actually take home. This deep asymmetry, one clear nominal win, many diffuse real-world losses, is exactly why so many people objectively lose ground financially while still feeling like they're doing okay, until one day they aren't. Now compound this quiet loss over time. You've been at your company 5 years. You've received nominal 2% raises every year. Your salary has grown from $58,000 to roughly $64,000. That is a 10.3% nominal increase. You look at your W-2 and you feel good about that number. But the consumer price index over the exact same 5 years, at a moderate 3.5% annualized, has compounded to an 18.7% increase in what things cost. Your salary is nominally up 10.3%. Your actual costs are really up 18.7%. Meaningfully, you are poorer. Your purchasing power did not beat inflation. It lagged it. Which is exactly why so many people in their late 30s and early 40s, people who went to college, got the good job, and did everything right, feel like they're exactly where they were a decade ago. Because economically, they kind of are. So what does any of this change? How do you actually break out of this math? The first thing it changes is how you evaluate your own compensation. A job offer or an annual raise is not a single number. It is a purchasing power statement. The correct question is not, what is my new salary? The only question that matters is, what is my real wage growth relative to my actual cost of living in the exact city where I live? Those are two very different questions, and most employees only ever ask the first one. Here is what the data shows about the people who actually grow their real income over time. They do not do it through annual merit raises. Merit raises, by design, track the market, and the corporate market, by design, tracks inflation. It doesn't beat it, it just paces it. Real income growth only comes from 3 distinct levers. The first lever is job switching. Workers who change employers often receive substantially larger pay increases than those who stay. That gap is often the single most efficient pay increase available to most workers. Loyalty in the modern corporate structure is often a financial penalty. The second lever is skill-based compensation leverage. People who acquire skills with genuinely high, uncommoditized market value access a different pay band entirely. They don't get a different percentage of the same band. They force a structural repricing of their labor because they do something the company cannot easily replace. The third lever is asset accumulation. Every dollar that goes into something that compounds independently of your employer's salary budget, index funds, real estate, equity, and a side business, is a dollar that is no longer subject to their 2% annual decision. Wealthy people rely on their assets to beat inflation, not their manager. None of this is overly complicated, but all of it requires a completely different set of decisions than most people are currently making. The decisions most people make are perfectly reasonable. Stay loyal to the company, do good work, expect to be recognized, and wait for the review cycle. The problem is that the recognition, when it finally comes, arrives in a currency that's been quietly devalued before it ever reaches your checking account. Back to where we started. Your employer gave you a 2% raise. On paper, you earned more. In reality, if, in a situation like the one we've just walked through, your effective purchasing power on essential goods fell by roughly 10% this year, you didn't receive a raise. You received a quieter kind of pay cut. Your boss didn't cut your salary. Inflation did. Taxes reduced how much of that raise reached your pocket. and a 2% raise simply wasn't enough to close the gap. The next time your company celebrates your raise, don't ask how much your salary increased. Ask how much your purchasing power actually did, because the most dangerous pay cut is the one that arrives disguised as a raise. And the people who understand that stop chasing bigger paychecks. They stop measuring success by the number on their pay statement and start measuring it by what that money can actually buy.